Good afternoon, everyone. It is great to see everyone here today on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I am so glad to be here today, welcoming everyone from all across the United States that's here on behalf of IPDA. First, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of myself, and my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm one of our subject matter experts here at IPDA. And on behalf of our executive director, Ms. Tammy Serrano, I'd like to welcome you on her behalf as well. So we are so excited to get started today with this topic of discussion. So in the past, we've presented on different ways to analyze data. And analyzing data is such a unique opportunity because as we've had data access increase, we've had access to data repositories. Maybe your departments are able to produce reports that are on Excel formats or text formats. You're able to download data that's more accessible to you from testing websites or maybe from your own student enterprise. You're able to then leverage that data to help determine situational outcomes, whether you have to make decisions to pivot, and being able to analyze that data pretty readily is so important. So in the past, we've talked about Excel. And Excel is a very powerful tool that most everyone has access to. Excel is a great tool because we all have it usually on our desktops. It's usually something that we can access from anywhere. We don't usually have a lot of restrictions associated with it, but it is great to present data, but sometimes it could be a little different to reload new data. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to refresh your data. And if not everyone has the same skill set, that sometimes your Excels can move from one person to the next, and then the data could be confused, or maybe someone hits delete, maybe it is been changed or altered, and having those different versions are often something that could cause risk to analyzing your data. So today we're going to dive into a topic called Tableau. And in our presentation today, an introduction to Tableau, an alternative solution for data analytics, we are going to look at different opportunities to use a resource for us to engage and entertain how to analyze our data. I know that sounds interesting, but we are going to be able to look at some data. We're going to look at some examples of some Excel and some adult ed data, and we're going to just examine the possibilities of using Tableau. So in this situation, I am monitoring our chat. I'm monitoring our questions. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like to ask, feel free to type them in the question box as we're presenting, because I want to make sure that we are providing access and opportunities for you on your side. If you are listening to this and you want to be able to watch the recording later on, this will be posted on our IPDA website within 48 hours after the presentation. So again, everyone's going to be muted, but if you have questions, please feel to write them in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat as we're going through this, and this is going to be an opportunity for us to grow together. So again, this will be posted within 48 hours on our IPDA website. I call the sessions that we do here interactive data sessions, because my goal is that I don't want to show you necessarily just the possibilities, but I want to also teach individuals how to be able to do what we have here today. So I call these interactive data sessions where we'll be able to work through some opportunities together. We're going to be looking at a software called Tableau, and it is one of the many. There are many data visualization softwares out there. There's quite a few of them. But the nice part about Tableau is that it has become extremely affordable. There are opportunities to download free versions to test it out to see how you like it. But again, I just want to show people the opportunity for us to use traditional dashboarding softwares as an alternative to Excel and Excel analytics, because of the way that we're able to host the data, the way that we're able to report on the data, and the way that we're able to disseminate the dashboards to people that are in our stakeholding group. So whether they're supervisors, whether they are people in your community, maybe it's some potential funders or donors, maybe individuals that are just curious about the success of their students. It's great to be able to post these visual analytics in public domains, such as websites, or even posting on social media like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. It's always great to be able to post these. And the nice part about these dashboards that are completed through things like Tableau or Power BI, then you're able to make sure that whatever you produce is secure and that it cannot really be changed. And that's one of the best parts about this, is that you're able to refresh the data very quickly, and that you can make sure that this data published is not going to be something that someone could change. They can always update it and do filters and dive into the different colors, but they can't change the basis of the data structure itself. This is a two-part series. So this first day on Tableau, I'm going to just show you some possibilities. I'm going to show you what data often looks like when it comes out of a systems enterprise, and we're going to examine some potential fallibility of it and some complex situations that often cause people issues when it comes to analyzing their data. But I want to show us in the next phase, in the step 2 of this process. If you'd like to, you can follow the process by downloading a copy of Tableau, and they give you 30 or 60 days free of using the software. You can actually work through it together with me. So this is going to be a great opportunity just to look at that. But then the common data set is going to be stored on the IPDAY website. And if you want to find it, we can post the link in the chat. And it's going to be the data set we're going to work at is going to follow the handout.xlsx file format. So the great thing about this is that we're going to look at some awesome community. One of the reasons why I love dashboarding and I love the opportunity for us to engage is because of the resources that are available for users in the world. So in the situation, I put some links in this chat, and this right here is just an example of some favorite data visualizations on Tableau, because this can be published publicly, and that's one thing I appreciate. It can be published to the public. So if you want to send to your stakeholders a link to the visualization, you're able to send them that. And these are just some examples of some out-of-the-box ways of thinking. And often people get a little overwhelmed because they think, gosh, you have to be a statistician or a data scientist in order to execute these dashboards and visualizations. And it definitely helps to have that background, but I can tell you that I've worked with many across the world in the higher education and the secondary education enterprises. And there's a lot that you can do with basic foundational knowledge that can be done very quickly and very consistently. So this is an example that I really like that gives great data visualization practices. Here are some great resources on Tableau. And so this is actually a Tableau public website. So I'm just going to bring that in to look at as well. And this right here is just an example where you can go through and look at some visualizations that are published publicly for individuals to look at, and you can dive into them. But the nice part is that maybe we wanted to look for specific types of visualization. So I can use cues like educational enrollment, or I'll just say education enrollment. And I can use this to then dive in, and I can see all these different visuals that are published by different entities and organizations. Here's a higher education enrollment by level institution from Tallahassee, Leon County. There are all these wonderful visualizations that people publish that give you the genesis for creating things at your own entity and organization that you can dive into and see, gosh, I really like this. Or maybe you are working with someone that you bring on maybe for a project as almost a consultant, and you tell this individual, hey, I love this visualization produced by this entity or this organization. Can you reproduce that for us? And these are the great part about the way that this community shares, is that you're able to dive in and you can look at visualizations from other entities and organizations. So I'll just pull open this one. This is Darden College of Education, and they have an enrollment in degrees conferred by concentration, where this is now public. They can take this and you can filter by graduate or undergraduate, looks like. Again, this was just one that I randomly found, and it reaggregates the data for users to have. And that's one of the nice parts about this, is that this is allowed to be shared. This is allowed for you to send out, but you can also download copies of this. You could also download images into PowerPoints and Excel, and those are available too. So there's just a lot of great resources you have in order to download images and download the data that maybe you could be using in a potential PowerPoint, or maybe even in a grant proposal. So there's just a lot that's on there. But lastly, a lot of times I've seen situations with softwares that don't have the resources available for education, the know-how. But one thing that I really enjoy is this is a training site. So there's a lot of great resources out there for free training, which has been extremely beneficial for me, someone that uses this on a consistent basis. But there's a lot of resources available, plus YouTube and YouTube series. There's a lot of MOOCs that are available for dashboarding and using Tableau. I've seen this, and I've seen this opportunity pop up in a lot of different courses in education across the United States. So there's just a great resource for it. People ask, I don't work for Tableau. I have no affinity to the company at all, but I do like the usability of the software. I love that people can learn rapidly and deploy something just by clicks. It's not very code-based, which is something that I like as well. There is ability to code with it, but again, that's not something that is required. So again, one of the keys that I like about it is that it's point and click. I'm going to show you some steps today. We're going to analyze some data. We're going to connect to the data. We're going to do some dragging and dropping, so I don't have to write out the code that you see sometimes in other statistical evaluation softwares You're not going to have to write out those if and and statements in the SQL potentially or the HTML. That's not involved with this. There is some potential opportunity for some construct coding, but again, not required. There's a lot of different types of visualizations specific to charts. And that's something that I really appreciate is that you can look at geospatial data, you can look at bar charts, you can look at lines, you can look at pie charts, you can look at histograms and heat maps. So there's just a great visual way of representing important data pieces. And lastly, you can connect to a lot of data sources very quickly. And that's going to be what we're going to be doing in more depth in part 2 of this series. I'm going to show in the next series, after we get through this introduction, how you can connect to data stored in Google, how you can connect to data stored in Office, how you can connect to data stored in a survey software. So there's a lot of ways to connect to data, but you can also, if you want to, throw in an Excel. If you got an Excel from a colleague or you downloaded it from a resource, you can use this and tap directly into an Excel document or a text file or any of the other types of files that exist. It connects to so many different types of data storage, data sources. So its ability to tap into that is wonderful. And there's a lot, I don't want to say AI, it's a cool term right now, but there's a lot of natural parts of Tableau that makes it very easy for correction. And I'm going to show you an example today with a date of birth. But there are a lot of opportunities if your organization or entity wants to dive into dashboarding. It allows for the ability for you to look at data at an instant. So once you develop these dashboards, it is very easy. And I use that term I don't use easy very often, but if you have your system enterprise and they give you new data or additional data, maybe you have increased enrollment, maybe you have student populations that are changing, maybe you have more testing records, maybe you have some LCPs and you want to analyze that and you've created something, as long as that data is consistent in the format, Tableau can suck it back up and it can present to you the same analytics associated with what you currently have developed. And that's something that I really appreciate, is that you don't have to redevelop something. And that's something that sometimes Excel struggles with a little bit, because you have to tell it to pick up new data, and sometimes it doesn't refresh the same way, and it's not something you can really lock into. But the nice part about this type of resource that it is easy to lock down. When you use Tableaus, often you are able to create visualizations that can satisfy the need for many different types of individuals. We often think that our populations we are engaging with are maybe our supervisors, but potentially there could be a need to develop a visual and distribute it out to the public, where people that you had no idea were interested in your data could access it, and that might just engage with opportunities. I publish visualizations for us to publish, and I publish them publicly, where I get engagements across the entire United States. I've got international engagements because of what I published for my organization, and that's something that I really appreciate. I see that we have a question coming in from one of our colleagues. Is it only compatible with sites that can be integrated with Tableau? That's a great question. Tableau is interesting because it's a software that is by itself. It's a self-sustaining software. You can publish it to Tableau Public, which is a free site, which is the one that we showed earlier. And then that visualization has its own embedded HTML link, plus it has its own unique links that can be published to other sites. So for example, if I were to publish, and we're going to publish something today, publish a visual, you could take the link that Tableau Public holds, and you could put that on your own website. And the nice part is that every time you upload the new data to your Tableau, that your website data and your dashboard on your website updates immediately. Well, as long as you hit the refresh. Sometimes there's some, but for most parts, it's immediate. So Michael, I know, it's so cool. And that's something that I appreciate, because often we think, gosh, this is prohibitive, and you have to have someone like a statistician. I am a biostatistician by education and trade, but I've worked with so many different entities. Once we have the data sources, you can publish this, and once the data pushes to the new Tableau, then that updates your website, it updates everywhere that you've linked to. So you don't have to keep doing that over and over again. And the nice part is that if you have stakeholders that are part of your organization that want to see, for example, trend enrollment, if they want to see how your students are doing, whether they're earning their GED, whether they are advancing and getting more educational gains, you can publish that as well, and you can tell the Tableau how often to refresh. And then once you have that data produced by your systems enterprise or by whatever data source you have, it can pick that up. And a lot of people have been a little apprehensive because they think it's extremely complex, and there are complexities to it. I don't want to diminish that, but it's very feasible to do. So awesome questions, Michael. This is one of the things that I really appreciate, is the strategy that we're going to have today is that often there's going to be potentially some data prep, but the data prep can be done completely in Tableau. A lot of times people, when they talk about data prep, you want to create and maybe, check some grammar. Maybe you want to make sure everything is in the proper case. Sometimes we get data where everything is always in capitalized form, and sometimes it's in a random erratic form, and you want to make sure that the data is consistently in the same utility. You want to clean your data. One thing that I love about this is that you can often combine data sets. So maybe you have an Excel from a software, like a testing software. Maybe you have an Excel from your student enterprise. Maybe you have an Excel that you're using from a public data source. Maybe you want to trend industry demand and occupational growth from your local area. You can have Tableau bring in all those different data sources and you can merge them on one visual so it doesn't show any difference. And that's something that I really appreciate about visualizations. When you combine different visualizations, you're able to do that as well. So if you create one visual that looks at LCPs, or you have one that looks at enrollment by demographics or by age group, you can combine those. And that's something that I think is fantastic. And again, you can export or publish this and share it. So that's something that makes life so much easier, is that when you get in the consistent process of being able to publish your data and not have to worry about redesigning it every time. So that way your industry knows, your people know that it can be accessible and they can go to a certain place to find it. They will always know to go there. And maybe there's going to be opportunities to advance it. And that happens often too. When people have access to the data, not the raw data where you're looking at student row data, but when they have access to the calculations, there are questions that just come from thoughts and discussions that people didn't realize they had before. But that's the beautiful part about this side of data science. So again, it's extremely fair for us to say that it's something that could grow and evolve. It's not always going to stay static. But again, it can really take the heavy burden off of the individuals at your entity and organization that are doing these calculations for reporting consistently day in and day out. And they can actually focus on using the data to improve and not necessarily to improve. And that's something that I always appreciate. Some example visualizations that I love targeting for adult ed are enrollment trends. How is our enrollment doing? Is there a difference between last fall and this fall? Is there a difference over last year and this year? There are entities that can do that very quickly. So you can target and you can see, where's my enrollment changing? Where is it increasing? Where is it decreasing? Is it increasing or decreasing because of, maybe different ages are moving in and out? Maybe demographics specific towards the student's ethnicity or race could be having an impact on the trend. There's all these interesting underlying themes associated with data that visualizations allow you to do. I love using Tableau and data analytics for attendance tracking, because when you can use it for attendance tracking, if you have a way for your attendance to be reported and aggregated either into an Excel or maybe you're exporting it, it is very good to use it for attendance tracking, because it can actually predict risks if you want it to, and say, gosh, you have a student that's really not attending, maybe you could do some early intervention. On the right there, we have an example of a adult ed Tableau that I developed for looking at distinct counts by distant learning, by instructional delivery methods. So this is just something that's very colorful, and you can see there that this was a snapshot from fall of 2024, and I looked at the simultaneous evaluation of student distinct head counts that were enrolled in different types of educational courses. So whether they were a hybrid blend, maybe it was on-campus instruction, or maybe they were in distance learning. There is an ability for you to look and say to Tableau, what happens if they're enrolled in both? Maybe they're doing it face-to-face and they're also doing it online. You can get more granular with your data and calculations to make sure you can disclose that either this is an unduplicated count or it's a duplicated count, or you can look at them both at the same time. And that's something that I appreciate as well. Geospatial analysis is one of my favorite facets of being able to use Tableau. When we're able to look at data geographically, you can see that the strategic analysis that's associated with it is relatively not super complex. What we have here is that we look at some enrollment heat maps. So this is these are districts. These are zip codes separated out. And even if someone has no idea what this is, people can look at colors. And colors, most people can look at colors. Most people can look at colors and say, there's a difference here between the light blue and the dark blue. Clearly, light blue and dark blue have different meanings, and there's a variation in between. I can tell you that the first visualization is up there at top, took about 30 minutes to create. It comes from an Excel file. It's a drag and drop. And to publish it took about 30 minutes from start to finish. Creating the visual itself took maybe 2 minutes. So that's the interesting part about this, is that being able to look at geospatial data, looking at enrollment by area, maybe looking at the age, the average age by zip code of your students, by enrollment, might help you target whether you want to go into certain areas and advertise your programs, or maybe look at educational risks based off of different zip codes. So there's a lot of things you can do by looking and tracking at the geospatial analytics associated with your student populations. But again, being able to look at this and have access to it is really what the stakeholders, the directors, the individuals that are involved with making those decisions can use. And when you don't have to spend the time developing these consistently day in and day out, you get a new Excel, you get a new report, and someone has to go through and aggregate this and recalculate, which happens to so many of our colleagues in adult ed, then you can actually make this a much more efficient process for analyzing the outcomes, so you can make decisions that can help your students. And that's one of the goals here. So what we're going to look at today, it's super exciting. And I'm so excited to be here and doing it with you, because I love being able to advance the common goals we have through IPDAY and through adult education and through everything that we do to target those that need some help getting their education and getting their GED or learning better skill sets. So we're going to open up some Tableau. We're going to look at a sample data set that I provide, and we're going to do some quick evaluations on some students by age and race and maybe some ethnicity. And again, as I'm going through this, you're not expected to do this process with me. I'm hoping that some in our next session will want to do it with me. So they'll download a free version and then potentially engage and try this out. But right now, I'm just going to show you the possibilities of using dashboards for your organization. And then that might spar some ideas that maybe you have team members at your organization, or maybe you want to leverage IPDAY and talk to IPDAY about ways to bring this to fruition at your organization, just to expand on current abilities to report. So if you had a chance to download, you're going to see the Excel that is associated here has a structure where we have two different sheets. We have a year that is split up into a unique way, but everything is 2022-2023. We have a unique student ID, and this is all fake data, so you don't have to worry about this being true. And we have students' first name and last name. We have students' date of birth. And I can tell you, colleagues that are here, that date of birth is one of the most difficult data fields to analyze, because everyone has a different way of putting it. Some people like putting it in the form of year, Y indicates the year of birth, then the month of birth, and then the day of birth. So notice here, this is one format, but often I work with individuals and they have to recalculate because Excel doesn't really like this way. And you have to put some formula in to correct it so it can be used to calculate. So this was the same date of birth value, but in a different format, where the organization that produced the data puts it in the format of month, /day, /year, and it looks a little bit different. And I'm going to show you the genius behind a lot of these dashboarding softwares and what they can do. We have a semester begin date here, and that's 1/1/2024. We have an age of the student, and this was actually calculated in Excel. So this was the age. So age is one of the most difficult fields to calculate when it comes to data science and statistics, because the definition of age is unique to the individual that needs it. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with individuals and they say, what's the student's age? And I have to say, when? When do you want me to calculate the student's age? Do you want it at the beginning of the semester? Do you want it at the end of the semester? Do you want it when they applied? Do you want it to when they graduated? What age would you like when you do this? Because age is variable. It's going to be changing. We get older and older every day. So this is one of the most interesting fields to be able to calculate, but I'll show you how Tableau can do it very nicely. So I have an age field here that says, what's the student's age of today? Notice that that could be a little complex to calculate if you didn't have this Excel formula to calculate the student's age. But then what's the age as of the student's semester begin date? You know, what is the age when they started? And you can see here just in this first row that when the student started the semester, they were 17 years old. However, as of today, the student is now 18 years old. So the student has aged a little bit. So there's just a lot of opportunities for us to look at calculations associated with this. Age groupings in Excel can be very complicated to calculate, not impossible to calculate, but they can be a little cumbersome. The programming language is a little bit tough, but we often want to calculate ages as in groups. So as we can see here, we have 16 through 18, 25 through 44, 55 through 59, and they are grouped And the nice part about looking at this, you can see that we use the date as of the semester begin start date to calculate this. We have the student's race and ethnicity. And notice here, someone might even notice in the data that we have the race, but then also someone added in the Hispanic Latino value. And this is traditionally a ethnicity, while the race is not including the Hispanic nature. So we're going to look in series 2 how to separate this out. And this happens quite often. When we report, we often have to report on whether a student is considered Black or African American, whether they're white, whether they're Asian or Filipino descent, all these different races. But ethnicity traditionally is whether they are identified as Hispanic or Latino. And then here we have some zip code data. So we know that the student zip code exists. We have their gender. We have whether they are an ABE or GED. But interesting enough, in this data set, ABE and GED are isolated, and then ESOL is in its own data set. So whoever wrote this code, whoever wrote this data set, produced a report that combines ABE and GED. So we have this student as a GED student, and this one is ABE. I suspect that there's not going to be as much GED as there is ABE because of those functioning levels. And then we can see we have some entry function levels, some EFLs. So colleagues that are out there, have you seen data that's looked like this at your institution? I'd love to hear if this is something that you've seen, if your organization has produced to you, and you can see this by student. If you want to comment that in your chat, I'd love to hear if this is an example of a data set that you've seen before. Or you might say, I've never seen data look like this before. Maybe I'm relatively new to my entity. That most organizations have an ability to produce data such that looks like this. So Michael, thank you so much. Michael, you've seen this before. I appreciate that. Other colleagues, I'd love to know if you've seen data structures like this in the past. One of the fascinating parts about creating this, thank you so much, Dr. Ugalde. One of the interesting parts is you have to work with that systems team, whether it's an enterprise solutions team, whether it's a management information team or an IT team, in order to get this data. But I promise if you're in Florida and you are at a district or a college or a technical school, you're reporting this data in some facet to the Department of Education. And so it probably exists somewhere. So Ellie Mae, great. Yes, I know you've seen this data before. We have a great question from Raina Durantz. Do you ever have trouble with zip code data? I've had to list all of the options in the Jacksonville area and then provide other option when the zip student can't type it in because too many students were trying their zip code incorrectly, or if they were ESOL student, they were providing their home country zip code. Yes. Raina Durantz, yes. Zip code data is very complex. Where is the student's home? Is it the student's home when they applied to be part of your program? Is it the zip code that they are living in now? What happens if there's a conflict because the zip code in your system doesn't allow a zip code city combination? So yes, there is always an opportunity for zip code issues. But the nice part, Raina, that I've seen is that when you're able to present this data and you can look at zip codes, you can also see what zip codes don't make sense. So that allows your team to go and engage and maybe help the students say, hey, we see that you are, your home zip code is in Texas, or it's in Oklahoma, or it's in Maine, and do you have one that's local to this area? And you can help get that information that you can use later on to assist the student, maybe for mailings. But yes, when you're able to see that, Raina, the data screams to you, the outliers scream to you. We're going to actually dive in that today. We're going to look at zip code data. So that's an awesome question. But the nice part is that data science and statistics has so many parts to it, Raina, that we have to evaluate the statistics. We have to have someone that can present the statistics. We have the experts that can look at the statistics and the data and say, does this make sense? But the cleaning process tends to be something that is iterative. But if you can find the ones that don't match, those are the ones that allow us to focus in immediately. So an awesome question. Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. Definitely review the video. We look forward to seeing you. So thank you so much. So again, so we have two different data sheets here. Notice that I will tell you the structure of the data between both sheets is the exact same thing. So we have this columns A through O, and then we have this the same exact columns A through O. And that's one of the key sets to this, is that your data source has to be consistent. If you get a data source from one person and then a data source from another person, as long as they can reproduce the data source on some consistent basis, but it has the same field headers, that makes this a much easier process. If this changes up or someone creates this and they don't keep their code, that's going to provide a risk. But that would happen no matter what, if you were dashboarding using Tableau or Power BI or any of the resources. So just recognizing that could be a risk. So let's dive in. Who here wants to create some visuals together? Is anyone here excited to create some visuals using Tableau? And I can show you exactly what I would do in order to analyze this data, to open it. I hope you are, because I'm so excited to share it with you. I love being able to share this with colleagues. Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. I appreciate you. I'm so excited to also help. And one of the reasons why we're doing this in this two-phased approach is because in here, I'm going to show the possibilities. We're going to post the possibilities, this video, but you might have a, I get it. Yeah, there's definitely approvals to be able to look at, but often the proof of concepts are so important, the genesis of them. And I love to make us work more efficiently versus something that's a little bit more inefficient. So if we have the ability to be efficient and we can spend, $12 a month on a software, or 15 or whatever it is, $25 a month on a software, or some way to dashboard, and you can take 10 hours away of aggregations and calculations in a month, and you can repurpose that to something else, then you are saving yourself time and time's money. So I love showing the resources and allowing people to grow together. So again, right now, I'm not expecting to follow along and do it with me. I'm expecting you just to see the possibilities of how to connect to data, of how for us to create some data, how I'm not going to do a lot of coding. I'm just going to do some drag and drop. So looking forward to it. And you're so welcome, Ellie. Appreciate you. Love expanding, and love what I love what you all do down in South Florida. So such a huge impact. As we can see with Tableau, this is the open screen, and there are some accelerators that they call in here. All this is just a fancy way for you to look at some samples. So they give you a lot of samples just to give you some visual opportunities. I'm not going to open those now just to be conscientious of time, but they give you a lot of resources that are available for you to use. Here, you can connect to Tableau server, but I don't want to get that far. I don't want to talk about connecting to a server. That's just right now too complicated for me. I see that I can connect to an Excel. Oh gosh, I can't tell you how many times Excel is going to be used. A text file some of you might see a text file, some of you might see a CSV. It has the ability to tap into PDFs. That is fantastic. I cannot tell you how many times I've received a PDF of student data or testing data, and someone's PDF'd it because that's all they could do. It can tap into PDFs, and it can find data structures in PDFs. And sometimes it might take a little bit correcting, but that has saved me so much time being able to get a PDF and not having to export it to Excel and then trying to figure out how to format it correctly and clean it. But I love being able to connect to PDFs. You're able to click on more. And when you look at this, when I click on more here, I can look at this opportunity for us to tap into all these different types of databases. In our next series, I'm going to show you how I'm going to connect to a Google Drive. You might have some data that you get from a survey that saves on your Google Drive, and you can connect safely to a Google Drive, and you can schedule the survey outcomes that you might be doing with your students, and you might maybe do some testing outcomes that's saved on your Google Drive. It can then pick up this information from your Google Drive. But for those that don't use Google, you might use Microsoft's OneDrive. Do not fret, but it can also interact and connect to OneDrive and SharePoint. But as you can see, there's so many different ways to connect to data, but I don't want to get into that for this point. I just want to talk about easy. I want to make this easy for everyone because I just want to tap into my Excel. And as you can see here on my Excel, all I had to do was open up, and now I find my IP Day, Tech Tuesday Tableau, and this was the day that we were looking at earlier. So notice all I did was click on it. I just clicked on it. Now I get this interface, and to the untrained eye, to someone that's not seen this might seem a little bit overwhelming. But again, just to remind us what the data looked like, I'm going to bring this in here just to do a quick show. We have these headers: year, student ID, first name, last name, date of birth, and so forth. All I have to do for Tableau to tap into that data is that I realize here that my two sheets that Tableau found are ABE, GED, and then ESOL. Those correspond to the same sheets that are down here: ABE, GED, and ESOL. Two sheets. Now, all I have to do, and we're just going to use one for right now, we're going to drag ABE and GED in to our center. So all I did was I just left clicked and I drug. So I hope I said that correctly. I left clicked on the sheet, and I'm just pulling it in. I'm pulling it in to this center interface, and Tableau does the rest. Oh my gosh. Notice we have here, and just to show colleagues what we have, I'll make this a little bit smaller over here. So colleagues, as we can see, awesome. Oh, thank you so much, colleagues. I appreciate you. As we can see, we have year, and I'll try to align this so you can see it better. The year here corresponds to the year here. Student ID corresponds to year. Student ID here, first name. It brings it in just like an Excel, but the power behind it analytically is so impressive. It's so impressive. And this is right now, as you can see up here, a live connection. So if you change the data, if you were to add more rows to this data or reconnect it to a data source that has the same structure, you're going to see it updating in Tableau, which is fantastic. And I'm going to show an example of that today. So let's look at this first situation. This is where I call it data cleaning. When we receive data that looks like this, we have 2006-0406, 2006-0406. So traditionally, Excel is saying this is probably a number. This is not maybe a date of birth. It's not naturally recognizing it. And the same thing happened here with Tableau. So as we can see, I made this a little bit bigger for colleagues. It brings in the header, and I have $20,060,406. Thanks. That's not what I want. Tableau, come on, this is the date of birth. I even told you it's date of birth. Do not fret. There's a lot of natural genius behind this software. I'm not getting into this, but these ABCs that are up here at the top, they just reflect that it's a text field, that it's not something that's numerical. But over here, it said, hey, this is a numeric field. It has the hashtag #. I'm going to tell Tableau, hey, Tableau, I know that you recognize this was a whole number, but in reality, this was actually a date. So all I have to do is left click on this, and notice it immediately found the date. And I put both of these fields here because you can see 4/6/2006 is the same value that's here. 4/8/8 here is the same value, but it transformed it. It transformed it because it said, you said it's a date, we're going to find the common output. So it immediately found this date for me, and it determined it, it calculated it. Notice here that now the little field here changed from an ABC to a little calendar, indicating that it is a field that is a calendar dated field. Notice this one still says ABC. So even though it says that it's a date field, it's not shown like a date field. Tableau said, okay, it looks like it's text. And I know it seems like it should be natural, but sometimes it's not perfect. But I'm going to come up here and see what happens if I say this is a date field as well. And notice Tableau says, oh, you know what? Thanks for pointing that out. It's definitely a date field. So it converts it to a date field. And that's one of the beauties about it. The nice part about the color schemes here is that this is a green calendar. And what that means is that you've converted this, and this was a numeric field. This is a blue calendar. I'll just click off there. This is a blue calendar. It just means you convert it from a text field. So the nice part about this is that it was able to convert this naturally. You don't have to do any of those manipulations. Very fantastic. As I move over, I can see that I have my semester begin date. This one showed up as a date field. It liked this one as a date field. It naturally picked that one up. This one is numeric. It's a hashtag #, hashtag #. This says, even though this says numbers, you can't really add them or multiply them. So it's not calling it a numeric field. It's calling it a text field for grouping purposes. It's actually a classification field. It found the race as being a text field. And then over here, oh, look, our zip code. It has a little world here. And this indicates that Tableau recognized that this was some sort of geospatial type data. It says, okay, we get it that it's a geospatial data. It's the zip codes. You can always click on it, and it'll actually default, and it gives you some geographic default roles, so it can tell you what it actually found it as, which is awesome. Gender is male and female, program is ABE, and our EFLs here show up as such. One quick thing I'm going to show is that, let's say here we have to pull out the year, and you're like, gosh, I just want the year by itself. I want it to be 2022. That often you would have to go and look up in Excel or get some of your colleagues or friends to help you out and recode it. The nice part about this is that Excel has this ability to split based off of how it thinks you want to split this up. So all I did here was I'm just doing some quick data change. I'm not programming. My hands are here. I'm once clicking on the mouse. I'm just coming over here and I'm saying, split this up for me and see if you can pick up on what it is. And it says, how should you be split? Use a separator. I'm just going to click, I was going to click here that I'm going to say that on here, I want to split this up, and I'm going to put in I see that there's a hyphen. So I'm putting in the hyphen right there. And now I get my split. No, I did not get my split. Of course, it doesn't happen when I'm doing this. But it would normally do a split, but I have to see what I did because, of course, I'm doing it publicly. But I would normally be able to split this data naturally, but it did not show up in this circumstance. But I will correct that as we're doing this, and I'll repost. Working through this now, as I've launched my data into this folder and into my Tableau workbook, I want to now analyze the data. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on my sheet. This looks like it's complicated, but have faith, it's not that bad. Over here, we can see that our data fields are separated into two different groups. This top portion, these are going to be our categorical variables. And this bottom portion, these are numerical variables. These are what they consider numerical variables that you can actually add, subtract, multiply, divide, or maybe there could be some latitude and longitudes that come in because of the zip codes associated with them. So in here we have two different groups, but right now I know that I'm just curious. Hey, I need to figure out how many students are in this data. And one of the biggest opportunities for us to do this in order to analyze this is that I want to know students maybe by age. If I left click on this, so I just left click, immediately what happened over here is that I have this little help guide. And I said, I clicked on one of these fields. Tableau, can you give me some recommendations on how you would analyze this age as of a date? And Tableau says, sure, I can do a recommended bar chart here, or I can do a histogram. Let me think. I'm just going to click on this histogram, and it says, in order for you to use this histogram, it recommends that you have one measure. And a measure is an example here of a value that is aggregatable, that is, you can multiply, you can divide it. So now when I click on this, notice what it does is that it goes ahead and provides a histogram. And look what it did. It tells me my age, it tells me the count, and it's grouped them in a histogram format. I didn't do any calculations. I just clicked and told me, and I said, Tableau, help me analyze something with age. How awesome is that? That didn't take very long. It looks a little overwhelming, but it went through and it did the coding for you. It used its natural abilities. And now we're able to look and we can see that we have a large portion of students that are between the ages of 18 and 22, and we have 276 of them. Again, colleagues, I'm just showing you, you're not supposed to memorize or take this away, but the nice part is there's a lot of great communities to support this. Let's say that I want to be able to see the number. I don't want to have to just highlight over it. All I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this down to a label. And now when I drag this down to a label, I see my numbers that are showing up right here. So I can see that I have 68 students that are between the ages of 14 and 18. I have 276 students that are between the ages of 18 and 22. And I have a nicely placed histogram. The nice part about this, again, I'm not dragging and clicking. I'm not doing any coding. I'm going to right click on this. And I say, you know what? I want to edit this axis. I don't want, it says count of age as of age date. I'm going to right click on here. And I'm going to edit my axis. And I say, I'm going to call this student head count. Student head count. And now I close it. And notice it replaced the axis. Just that simple. Very click oriented. I can't tell you how many times in Excel I've forgotten how to update a header. And I don't say, okay, where's the header? Now there's so many great options with it, but I sometimes get confused when I'm trying to figure out, how do I update this axis? Do I click on this button? Do I click on this button? Everything here is very intuitive. And then here, I don't really like where it says age as of date bin. I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to edit my axis, and I'm just going to call this age groups. Age groups. So that way anyone can see it, is going to be happy with it. And I'm just going to click off that. Again, I'm not doing anything super complicated. And I look at this and I say, okay, I appreciate this, but I want to make this, this number a little bit bigger. I'm going to come over to my label. All these are considered labels. And I'm going to left click. This might look a little complicated, but have no fear. I'm going to click on this little button. And I might say, I want to make this to a size 15. And now I made this a little bit bigger. I'm going to bold it. I'm going to apply and see what that does. And I say, oh, I like that. That looks pretty nice. And now within seconds, I can see my enrollment over the different age groups. How cool was that? And that didn't take us very long. It took us just a couple minutes. But the nice thing is that if my data source changes or we update it or we refresh it, updating and refreshing is the same thing, this will update as well. So I don't want to call this sheet one anymore. I'm going to call this, I'm just going to double click on this little sheet down here, and I'm going to call this enrollment by age groups. Bang. So now I know that I can see that at my organization, I have some pretty sturdy enrollment between my students 18 to 22 years of age over these different categories. But I do have some students that are relatively older. But the nice part is that we start building in filters, and we're going to do that during our next experience. As we start building these up a little bit and we add some filters, we can see how this trends over time. And that's where you can see differences. And then those differences can be expounded upon, and you can analyze them and you can figure them out with colleagues. So you know what? I'm so happy with this. I feel like I made great movement. I want to try some things out. I want to dabble and see if I can add some color and some maybe pizzazz to it, to see if we can look at age by gender. Maybe we can look at age by gender. But I don't want to screw this one up. I'm happy with it. I want to think about publishing it. I'm going to right click on this, and this one allows me to duplicate. I can take the exact same configurations that Tableau did for me for most of the work. And I can duplicate this now as a crosstab. And what it does, it creates the same exact configurations, and it's just named a 2 after it. So now what I want to do is I say, I'm really curious about my enrollment by our gender. What is our enrollment by age by gender look? So I'm just going to say enrollment by age groups, and I'm just going to call enrollment by age groups by gender. So it changed my header up here. That's the nice part. It's very double click, very point click. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my gender field. So I'm just left clicking and dragging. Notice it's telling me that there's a dimension up here. There's the measures here. Dimensions are categorization variables. Measures are quantitative variables, qualitative versus quantitative. I'm going to drag that into color. So I'm not doing any coding. I'm dragging my gender into color. Wow, look at that. I can see that I have a 50-50 split with this and this age group. I have not a 50-50 split here. I'm really curious. Gosh, I didn't realize that I could just rapidly see so quickly my different genders. So I'm going to hold this, drag this into my label because I want to show the user. So know what I just did there is really quick. I just took the gender field, I drag it in the label, and now all within seconds, we can see that I have 137 females, 138 males between the ages of 18 and 22. I have a small population down here that's gender X. Oh my gosh. What does this gender X mean? Oh, I don't know if I like gender X. That doesn't look, I don't want to publish gender X. That's not us. Our system produced gender X. Maybe that means the student didn't disclose their gender. Maybe you didn't have the information. Gosh, I don't want to spend a lot of time recoding my data. Have no fear. I'm going to right click on my X. And we can all see here where it says edit the alias. So I'm not doing any coding. I'm not doing anything major. I'm just editing my alias. And I'm going to say this is an undisclosed gender. So now it changed it, and I don't have to worry about this anymore being gender X, potentially causing confusion. I can say that, the student did disclose their gender when they applied or when they came onto my program. So that's something that I love about this. But notice, just in 5-6 minutes, without doing any coding, we let Tableau take the reign for us. We've created 2 different visualizations, one enrollment by age group, one enrollment by age by gender. How cool is that? So in this situation, we're going to dive into how to look at percentages. We're going to do some percent calculations next time, but it's really not a calculation. It can be a point and click change. But again, that'll be in our next visual, next Text Tuesday next month. So let's go ahead, and everyone loves the geospatial data about zip codes. I love zip codes. I love working with it. Sometimes when I'm working and I don't really know what to do, and this happens to me, it's sort of the genesis, I think, of a lot of great science. Sometimes you just have to toy and toggle and practice and see what works and see what doesn't work. So here I see that I have zip codes. So you know what? I'm just going to try left clicking on it, and I'm going to click on show me to see, okay, Tableau's recommending something up here. It's got some recommendations where I see some world geography maps. I've left clicked on this. I've left clicked on my, here's my year split. I'll look at that. Earlier, it didn't find my year split, but it found, okay, here's the year split that it didn't produce it next to it, it produced at the end. So it found earlier the year split. I didn't realize it put it at the end there. So when I wasn't able to do that earlier, here's my year split. So it found that it split the year off into 2022, and that's what it did. So thank goodness it actually worked. All right, back to the visual. I'm going to click on my zip code here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this map. And okay, look at this. I see, it looks like a map. I have some blue dots here. I see 33025. I see 33023. I see 33020. And I'm going to pull up my data just to see if that is consistent with what my data had. And I do see here that in my data, it found those zip codes 33023, 33025, and so forth. So it found them, but these little dots don't help. I'm going to click on this bigger one that has more colors. And notice now, oh my gosh, I did no coding. I just clicked and said, Tableau, help me with this data. What do you think we can do with this? And notice when I left click on this, it says, here's the zip code for 33025. Here's the zip code for 33023. Here's the zip code for 33009. So this, I'm betting, is a representation of our enrollment by zip code. How cool is that? But it doesn't tell me any numbers. I want to know the numbers. How many numbers do I have? So here's where the opportunity can get interesting. Maybe I want to know more than just my enrollment. Maybe I want to know my age. Is there a difference in age between these different zip codes? Let's test that out, because if we can get a little bit more analytical than just numerical values, let's say age, average age by zip code. So average age by zip code. I'm going to take my age. I'm going to say as of date. I'm just going to drag that in here. So I'm just dragging. It says show me. I'm going to put that in here. Wow, I have some color changes. Look at this. All of a sudden my colors changed up a little bit, and I say, okay, this one's a darker blue, this one's a medium tone blue, and this one's a lighter blue. And as we can all see here, that it says that it has age, but it looks like the age is really big. And hopefully we can all see here that Tableau said, I think you want me to sum the age, but we don't want you to sum the age. No, Tableau, no, we don't. So I really want you to find the average age. So I'm going to left click on this. So again, I'm not coding, I'm dragging and dropping, and I see where it says sum. I see where it says sum. I don't want you to tell me the sum, Tableau. Don't sum all the ages for people in the zip codes. That doesn't make sense to me. Find the average. Oh, look, that changed the color. When we averaged it out, all of a sudden my colors changed. I don't know what they are. I want to actually see it. So I'm going to do what I did before. I took my average pill. They call this a pill. And I'm going to drag this on the label. And now I can see I have, oh, that's pretty cool. I like this. I'm going to right click on that. I'm going to go to format. I want to see the values a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make this 16. I might bold them. So now I can see my average age for the 33025. Oh, I don't want to just hold it. I want to see the zip code. No problem. Drag the zip code pill, pull it on the text field. And now I can see that in 33025, my average age of my students are 25.46. And my average age in 33023 is 25.84. The colors look almost identical. But notice up here, the colors changed. The colors changed a little bit because I have a slightly older population in the 33004 zip code. I don't know why. I am the person just putting this together. But in this data set, we can see that the color, the visual nature of this changed for the 33004 zip code. And then we have something that's a little bit in between, 26 and this one. Again, we can always dab out. As you can see, I love this because if you have more data, it'll fill up more of the Florida region. So you can see this is a portion in South Florida, beautiful area. But I dive back into it just to show some examples of cleaning up the data and the possibilities. Again, I have my average age here as the color. What is being displayed is this average age pill. I don't want to display out to the 10,000th decimal unit. I want to only just display the year. So I'm going to go to my format again, and I see my numbers are going to go to custom, and I'm going to drop this down to 0. And now I have this displayed as 25, 26, 25, 24, 27, and 27. And then lastly, maybe I want to put some visual definitions because I have it up here, but maybe it might help the readers to see this is the average age of 25. We can do it, very feasible. I'm going to go to the detail here, and I'm going to look at the label, and I'm going to come over here. And the nice thing is that I'm just going to say in this discussion, this is average age. Do not fret about what the coding looks like because Tableau is doing that behind the scene. And notice now I have my average age 25, average age 26, and we can clearly see definitively that our average ages in these two areas are different because of the color scheme. But notice I did very little computations. I did very little coding. But in 15 minutes, we created 1 visualization, 2 visualizations, 3 visualizations that have impactful meaning that you can publish to a cloud and share and update the data readily. Hey, all, you know what? We're always curious about the outliers. Are there people potentially that could be older? There are older, I don't know. Maybe that's true. I don't want to look at average. Maybe I want to look at median. So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to duplicate this. And I've done all my colors. I like the way it's coded, but I want to tell Tableau, I don't want to look at the average age anymore. I want to look at the median. So I'm going to left click on this. I don't want to use the average. I want to look at the median. And notice the median, the middle, I went from a 25 to a 21. Wow. But I got to change the color dimensions too. So I'm going to change this measure to median. And notice it changes up my color. So I can see here that the middle age group, if I take all of them, the person that falls in the middle, if I vertically align all the, or horizontally align, whichever, if you put all the ages of every individual, line them up in a numerical chronology in order, that the middle value is 21. So before we had the average age being 25, we have people here that are 21. So this actually has a skew to the nature. So there are some people that are older that are causing this average to go up, but the majority of the people in this zip code are younger. But there are some older people coming in. But we can see that the average and the median are different. I don't want to have this say average anymore. I need this to say median. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to alter what it says, and now I'm going to say median age. Whoops, median age. Here, I got to change my title. So I'm going to change my title, median age, by zip code, just like that. Hey, all, you know what? I know we're getting close on time. I'm going to create a dashboard of all 4 of these visualizations. I'm going to come over here, and there's some options about a new worksheet or a new dashboard. I'm going to create a new dashboard. I'm not going to get into anything lavish. I'm just going to drag this in. So I have my enrollment groups by age. I'm going to drag this in underneath it. I have now my enrollment group by age, by gender. So I'm looking at this simultaneously. It automatically places my gender up here. That was drag and click. I'm going to drag in my average age by zip code here, and I'll put it maybe there. And then I'm going to drag my median age here. And now I have a zip code. I'm sorry, now I have a visualization. And I can, of course, make this a little bit more fancy than I would, but it allows me to rapidly place all 4 of those visualizations on one dashboard that now I could publish. I could publish this to Tableau Public at no cost. There's no cost to it. I could share this with colleagues and make sure that everyone has access to this. The neat part about this is that I'm going to show an example. Right now, this is connected live to the data. So here, I'm just going to show an example of what happens if I were to delete these rows. I just deleted those rows. So now my total student population has changed. I'm going to hit save. And whoops, there we go. I have to save it. I'll go back and save. So I'm going to save it. It wanted me to save it live, but I could save it. I'll actually show it next one because we're getting low on time. What happens when we add or subtract data from it, and it's going to actually change the values. So that's going to be a live calculation as well. Sorry, that didn't work right now, but I want to be conscientious of our time. I realize now that we've gone through quite a bit of information quickly, and I hope this has been helpful. We are now going to be triggered for a survey, and we're going to ask Joseph to post a survey. I also want to tell you about our next session, and our next session that is going to be hosted tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is called Creating a Community of Learning Through Task and Project-Based Activities. A fascinating session. I'm so looking forward to it. That it's going to be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Creating a Community of Learning Through Task and Project-Based Activities. Colleagues, I have really enjoyed working with you today. It's been wonderful. I love the idea of what we do in IPTA. I love the idea of how we work together in Florida and even beyond states now doing this. I've met people that have attended from all over the country, North Carolina. It's so wonderful to meet colleagues. If there's ever any questions, please feel free to email me directly or contact IPTA. I love doing follow-ups. I've had a lot of great conversations. You can follow us on LinkedIn, as we're going to be posting on LinkedIn as well. So colleagues, I appreciate all of you sticking together and looking at this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at Creating a Community of Learning Through Task and Project-Based Activities. Part 2 to this will be at our Tech Tuesday next month in March, March 25th or 26th, March 25th, I believe, at the same time. So that's gonna be our next Tech Tuesday, a follow-up to this. So if you have colleagues that you feel might appreciate this, or maybe more on the calculation side, or maybe do the data for your team, feel free to let them chime in. And we'd love to see them here at IPTA. So thank you, colleagues. It's so great to meet you and see you. Michael, thank you for your conversation today. Dr. Ugalde, thank you so much for your attendance. Rachel, Kathleen, great to see everyone. Monique, always wonderful to see you all. So thank you so much. And thank you for completing the survey as well.